Welcome to another episode of the No Edit Podcast. Basically, this is where I get a chance to just rant about whatever I want for a little bit, and you're just along for the ride. I am a musician and just an enjoyer of learning things. So let's talk about some stuff. The main thing I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to be very upfront with this, and this is a big part of this podcast, I like to talk about stuff that I don't necessarily read or know about. That sounds really weird, but I like to talk about, pop culture stuff a little bit. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Andrew Huberman stuff. For those who don't know, Andrew Huberman is a neuroscientist, studies the brain. He has an institute, and then he runs a crazy podcast that's super popular where he talks about, hacks and other things. He's got some nice things to say, and he's got a lot of really important big guests, kind of that Joe Rogan-esque, also Lex Friedman's in that group, Chris Williamson, all these people like trying to basically tell us how we should live our lives, how we should be better people, all that business. So now that you have the context, basically lots of accusations have come out about, him sort of, working, sort of maybe gaslighting some women, lots of not great stuff, and, also calling into question what is he really an expert in, because of course, he's dealing with a lot of sensitive scientific issues. He'll act like he really knows what he's talking about, but in reality, as any of us, we're only experts in a very small amount of things, and it's very hard to actually be super scientifically rigorous when we start to expand and we try to talk with knowledge and expertise on many subjects. Like, for example, I work out, I do a lot of stuff with fitness, but I am a musician. That's where my expertise lies. And the moment I get outside of the musical sphere, like even talking right now, chances are I'm going to say something that is just not true. And it's because it's really hard to pace through all the details you need to make sure that the statement you're saying is perfectly true. The study that you're looking at might be older. It might have some nuanced way that they conducted it, so on and so forth. It might be a evidence of absence versus an absence of evidence. All those crazy different scientific things that can cause doubt to occur. And that's probably the biggest posture we need to take from this, which is we really should be in a constant state of doubting what we are told, what we hear, and if it's too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true, and there are no simple answers for most things, not all things. I think some things do actually have simple answers. So, the last thing I'd say about the Andrew Huberman thing is there's also these accusations about him being a narcissist, and I just have to say, if you're a brain chemist, or not a brain chemist, a neuroscientist, right? Someone who studies the brain. You have an institute where you research neurochemistry. Then on top of that, you are running a podcast where you talk to the smartest people around all the time. I think you're going to have a pretty high evaluation of yourself. It's just kind of inevitable. So I'd say just pick your lane. Like, that's the cool thing about Joe Rogan or some of these other guys like Chris Williamson is like, they're not super heady intellectual people, but they interview a lot of super heady intellectual people, and they themselves like that stuff, but they are not these big scientists or whatever. I think that might actually be a good balance there, because it leads to a more everyman take versus an expert take, which I think is the big problem with the Huberman stuff, is being an expert. Well, let's talk about some music stuff too. I want to talk a little bit about jazz. I've been thinking a little bit more about jazz. I'm preparing for some different jazz things. And it made me bring up one of my biggest annoyances about how jazz is taught today. And that is we overly analyze and over-academeize jazz. I think a big part of the way people played jazz in the past is they would just do things because they wanted to do them. And now we analyze after the fact and go, why does that sound so good? And I think something we forget is it might sound good just because they did it and they wanted to do it. So I wonder if we could just teach people how to do that. Just do things that you want to do. That's kind of the most powerful thing with music. Like, you look at somebody like Jacob Collier. Why does the stuff that he does sound so good? It probably has nothing to do, well, no, it has a lot to do with the chords he chooses and all that. He's definitely very knowledgeable, but at the same time, it's just because he wants to. We worry too much about the rules. If you forget about the rules, your world opens up and you have a lot more options. That's all I wanted to talk about. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And until next time, I'll see you later. Peace.